welcome back to the Inking Out Loud podcast. Today, on episode 54, we're covering Solo Command by Aaron Alston, the third Wraith Squadron book in the old Star Wars Expanded Universe. I'm your host, Drew McCaffrey, and with me is my special guest, Lauren McCaffrey. How's it going, Lauren?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. Doing these Star Wars books has been a lot of fun. As usual with the Star Wars books, it's just the two of us. Rob is doing his own thing up in Canada and being too cool for Star Wars, so... Yeah.
Is that what he said?
No, it's not. I'm just making fun of him.
Or we're just nerdier. Or you are. I'm going to blame you.
Yeah. So, with Solo Command, we pick up pretty much directly after the events of Iron Fist, where, at the end of Iron Fist, Han Solo's task force hunting down Warlord Zinj trapped him and destroyed the new Super Star Destroyer. Wow, our cat is really having a blast over there. Destroyed the new Super Star Destroyer that Zinj stole from Kuat. And so the Wraiths are officially joining up with the Rogues and the rest of Han Solo's task force. Instead of going undercover like they did in the previous two books, they're going to be on Mon Ramonda and part of a concentrated task force. But that doesn't mean they don't get to do some fun stealth missions and commando things. They infiltrate the Binring Biomedical Institute to discover information about Warlord Zinj's covert activities and his brainwashing techniques. And our cat is really hell-bent on interrupting the podcast today. And so they capture Dr. Etta Gast while they're there. Oh, man. They capture Dr. Etta Gast while they're there, and they, over the course of the book, extract information and help shut down Zinj's sort of brainwashing program. Meanwhile, Lara Notzel / Gara Petithel is still undercover with the Wraiths. She is determined to be Lara Notzel instead of Gara Petithel. She's determined to be a loyal Wraith, but the truth comes out inadvertently in the middle of a mission, and she has to flee. So she goes undercover once again as a double agent, goes back to Warlord Zinj, and works to undermine him from the inside. And kind of throughout a series of circumstances, sets up Zinj for a trap at the end of the book in the climactic battle. And while Zinj loses the battle pretty handily, he does pull a fast one and fake the destruction of the Iron Fist, but actually the Iron Fist gets away. And after that, in the aftermath, Wraith Squadron is given their kind of official operational commission, but they are decommissioned as a starfighter squadron and recommissioned as an intelligence commando unit. So that's kind of where we ended with this book. Lauren, tell me, what did you think?
I really like this book, and the first time when you read it to me, there were some very dramatic moments.
Yeah, I think of the three Wraith books that we've covered now, this is easily the best of the three. I think the writing, plotting, and character development are all just on a new level.
Yeah.
While Wraith Squadron had a pretty strong character arc in it, I thought Iron Fist was a little more scattered, a little less focused on character.
That's fair.
And this one, it really felt like Alston narrowed things back in, and while we do have a variety of points of view, the main focus in this book is on Lara Notzel and Mindonos and their respective relationships with themselves and with each other, and ultimately finding their peace.
Yeah, and that's where the most drama was. If you remember at one point I told you if you stopped reading, I was gonna stop talking to you.
Yeah.
I think that was like when Lara was revealed.
Mm-hmm. When
Might have
Face
been
accidentally broadcasted over the wideband.
Yeah, there were a couple spots where I was like, I don't even know how to feel. It was just a lot.
Well, let's start with Lara, because I think she is the most major character in this book. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I have a couple bookmarks for her parts.
Yeah, I mean, she has such a compelling character progression in this, where she has this just total mess of an internal landscape and this identity crisis, and ultimately finds, I think, a really heartfelt and touching solution to it, where she goes back to this Kearney Slane identity that
that hurt.
Yeah, where she felt like she had to leave both Gera and Lara in the past and become Kearney Slane, the fake identity she was given to train with in Imperial intelligence way back in the day, and then told to abandon it entirely after that. And that, I thought, was a really symbolic gesture on her part. You know, it's that final abandonment of the Imperial intelligence brainwashing that was done on her.
I just thought it was so painful when she had to run from the race. And she went to the Hawkbat base and just, like, was a crumpled mess. It was like, I have no identity anymore. I might as well be Kearney. She's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then she has a moment on Iron Fist where she tells Tannen, her R2 unit, she's like, don't call me Gera. Call me Kearney. Like,
yeah.
I don't deserve any of the names that I've had.
I don't know if it was so much I don't deserve the names as those just aren't me.
Yeah, okay. Fair.
And she says she will be Gera and she will be Lara for the benefit of those who don't understand her. But to Tannen, she says, when it's just like this, when it's in private with the two of us, call me Kearney. And of course, then we see at the end of the book, she reaches out to Mindonos as Kearney Slane.
Okay, so comment on that, because I think I was too excited about things, and I totally missed the spot at the end of the message where she's like, oh, and you definitely have to meet my co-pilot.
Yeah. Not Ketch.
Not Ketch. What is his name?
Kolot, I think.
Yeah. Who is a
biogenetically engineered Ewok.
Yeah, and he can fly because he's got like limb extensions. I loved that.
Yeah, so that was, this is kind of emblematic of Alston's talent as a writer, where he can take a scene that is funny, where it's been this running gag for 3 books now about Lieutenant Ketch, this fake Ewok who, takes on a life of its own in Iron Fist when Caston messes with the voiceovers, and so Wedge has to act like, he has to wear the stuffed animal of Ketch, and Jansen's been having the stuffed animal wander around the base and play pranks and all of this. And then here at the end, we take what is a humorous situation and we turn it into an important character moment when she says, when Kolot is telling her that he can fly and how he has the prosthetics, the limb extensions, and how the scientists put him through simulators to see if he could fly, and she just screams at him to stop, and he doesn't understand, and she says, you don't understand now, but you will at some point. The thing is, we're the same, you and I. We're both lies that became the truth. And how he can take a running gag over 3 books and turn it into one of the most pivotal character moments in the whole series is just incredible writing.
And honestly, so I'm looking through my bookmarks. They're all moments with her.
Every bookmark is.
Not every single one.
Okay.
I missed one though. So I love the first moment with Min being forward with her and flirting with her. Like, the lines that he uses are great.
So I wanted to bring this up with you. When I read that for the first time, you know, I thought it was an entertaining scene and everything, but this last time I read it, I was a little unsettled by it because there was a pretty clear unwillingness on Lyra's part in that scene. She says no over and over again, and then he kisses her anyway. And then she has this sort of, you know, like, reluctant acceptance of the kiss. And then he makes a smart remark, and she shoves him away and shoves him into the wing of the Interceptor and stalks away and tells him to leave her alone.
No, she has a moment in the conversation where she's like, I don't deserve this. Like, I don't deserve to be happy, and you would hate me if you really knew me.
Yes.
But she acknowledges that she would want that if it were possible. But it is reluctant. But she does say it.
I don't think that she's at that stage. I think it's later when he's talking to her in the lounge on Mon Ramonda that she accepts her interest in him.
She also kisses him back.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. She has this reluctant acceptance of the kiss where he says when he goes in for it, she's stiff and tense and, like, isn't receptive. And then he just keeps going with it. And then she, like, chills out with the kiss. And then he pulls away and makes the smart remark. He says, you know, that's more like it or whatever. And
she grabs him back for a second, too.
But then she shoves him away and says, leave me alone.
He makes a nasty remark. Yeah. He makes a cocky remark. That's what it is.
Yeah, he says that's more like it.
Yeah.
Because that's a tacit recognition of the fact that she was not saying yes. That was a very James Bondy moment where it's like, you keep going until the no turns into a yes kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that unsettled me a little bit.
It is uncomfortable.
So, while Min is one of the main characters in this book, and on the whole I like Min, I can't fully get behind him there. And I will say, I will add on, I think they both figure out some internal problems with themselves, and the relationship they have towards the end of the book is in a much healthier place.
Yeah.
You know, between the message that she leaves, you know, the undercover message with the laser transmission, and kind of her explanation of her mental state and thought process, I thought showed a lot of growth for her. And Min had to show a lot of growth after he tried to kill her, and then had to really settle his own issues.
Wedge comes right at him.
Yeah.
And I love that scene too. I just forgot to bookmark it.
With the boot.
Well, not just the boot, but Wedge is like unacceptable. Mm-hmm. Unacceptable.
Yeah, and this is another example of Alston's style, where he can take a moment of levity, this boot situation where Wedge takes his boot off, and it's this absurd moment, couched in a completely fraught conversation, where this is a major character moment for Min Donos, and for his recovery, his emotional reconstruction after everything he's gone through.
He's finally confronted with it. They've been tiptoeing around his mess of a head, and finally he's like, clearly you cannot function in our squadron until you fix your stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
you can decide right now what you would like to do. And then he has a good moment with Wes.
Yeah.
Where Wes is like, look, you're dead, I'm alive. You want to see the difference? Watch me jump on my bed. Have you ever done this? Have you ever looked stupid? No. You haven't.
You can't be dignified when you're having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that, again, that you can't be dignified when you're having fun, that quote comes around again. This is such a recurring, almost a trope, but it's a kind of an author-specific trope, especially in the expanded universe, where Alston takes these powerful character moments and spices them up with humor. So you don't have an unrelenting sort of emotional assault on you the way you might in, if another author told this story. It provides these moments of brightness in what is otherwise a pretty dark story.
Without ruining it.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from the emotional impact.
Yeah.
It just flavors it.
It would be a problem if they had this moment of levity and all the characters are still like, no, I'm in this dark place. Like, just because you're laughing doesn't take away the dark place. But they do have, like, have, the emotions are communicated. Like, you're right, there's levity there.
It shows, I think, a good understanding of what, the human side, and I say human in relation to us as readers, because obviously many of the characters in this book are non-humans, but they more or less experience human emotions. And it shows the human side of warfare. And in Star Wars especially, war is romanticized so much.
Yeah.
And this book, the Wraith books as a whole, but this book especially, really interrogates the emotional and mental toll of war and death and loss, and we see genuine character development come out of that, which I appreciate. And that's not something that you get in a lot of other Star Wars books. I know there's been a little more of an effort made in some of the recent ones, especially Alphabet Squadron, which I know must have been partially inspired by some of the themes and ideas in Wraith Squadron. But it's just really... It takes the book to another level, having these character arcs.
I do find it interesting that they never name, like, Donos's PTSD.
They don't name it as PTSD, so to speak.
There is no name. They just say, like, oh, the medics are going to check you out, and when you're cleared, you're cleared, but, like, deal with your head, Mm-hmm. And I remember growing up, when you have to read those Civil War books or Revolutionary War books, they call it, like, Soldier's Heart.
Shell shock, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first instance for me, it was Soldier's Heart. And so it was kind of...
I've never heard that term before.
Yeah. And they don't really explain it because they don't want you to understand, because they know their audience is young.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I kind of see an element of that in here. Maybe just compared to what we have been reading, where it's very much like, you have PTSD.
Yeah.
These are your symptoms. Like, you've been through a number of battles, and they left their marks on you.
Yeah, and this is something, we'll explore a lot more a few months from now when we get into the Black Company. Which is another series that strives to genuinely portray the soldier's experience, the grunt, the frontline soldier, and how war can affect you.
Can I just say the line from it?
Which?
Soldiers live and wonder why.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we'll get there.
It's darker than this for sure.
Yeah. But it is a similar thing, to again draw that parallel, where Glenn Cook has this style of dealing with these dark human experiences in war and leavens it with humor.
Well, he has real experience.
Yes, and I don't know if Aaron Alston was in the military. I should say that. I haven't looked up much about his past life, before he passed away just a few years ago. So, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if, based on what he wrote in the Wraith books, if he did have some experience in the military.
I mean, but also his audience isn't the same as Black Company's or Glenn Cook's audience. His target audience is older, I think. At least older.
You think Cook's target audience is older?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
that's fair.
He was thinking about his fellow soldiers, or yeah.
And there is a definite, especially when these X-Wing books were coming out in like the 90s and stuff. There was definitely a conscious decision to market those books to like teenage boys.
Yeah, different audience, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, first scene, though, I just realized. So when Face starts to figure out who Lara is,
okay,
they're in a museum, right? And that guy, the old guy, recognizes her and is like, I know you. But he doesn't say Kearney Slane, he says another name.
He says Adalia Montefiore.
Yeah,
he
that was his mother. Her mother?
Yeah, that was her mother.
Oh, right. Okay, but there's another man in the museum, Vin Narcason, who...
Vin Narcason, yeah. That's Shallow's father.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why Face is like... Oh, no, it's Min. Min is like,
I gotta tell Shallow to come check this out later today. Yeah.
Well, he says, I recognize them, and I can't quite figure out why.
So, he goes back the second time, and he recognizes the smile and the dimples. And that's when it clicks for him, because Shallow has the same dimples and the same smile. And then, as he's walking away, he thinks to himself, I gotta tell Shallow she needs to check this out before we deploy.
And he's still alive, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. He went into hiding. He sort of saw what was happening with the advent of the Empire, and he went into hiding and raised his daughters according to the old Republic intelligence ways.
To be...
Total badasses.
I wasn't going to say badasses. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So, do you have anything more to talk about Shala? Lara.
Let me check my last bookmark. Oh, I guess I just had that moment where Lara's like, she's like reflecting on how she's alone. A secret enemy of those who now employed her. A public enemy of those whom she desperately wanted to return. Mm-hmm. That was a feel moment for me. It was so sad.
Yeah.
It just...
And she had it rough in this book.
Yeah. Yeah. And Face outing her in the middle of a battle.
Well, after the battle, but yeah.
That was an extremely inappropriate time. And I know he didn't mean to, and he slipped up and had it on the wrong comm channel. But I was very upset.
Well, it's a brutal moment. It's probably in a lot of ways, the emotional climax of the book.
I mean, then it sets Min off with his PTSD, and he just starts trying to kill her.
Mm-hmm. And almost kills Face.
Oh. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the emotional climax for sure.
Yeah, so, I think I cut Face a little more slack than you seem to, because it was an honest mistake, and I
know it was, but I'm still mad at him.
It has a tie back, right? So, Face and Wedge have a few of these scenes, mostly in Iron Fist and then in Solo Command here, where Wedge talks to Face and sort of coaches him in leadership.
I love that.
And one of the first lessons Wedge teaches Face is that he has to trust his gut. That if he's going to be an effective leader, he needs to be able to trust his own instincts and follow those in high-pressure situations. And in this situation, this was one where Face trusted his gut in the moment and said, I could not let it wait.
Yeah.
In retrospect, he says, yeah, I probably could have. But I had to go with my gut. And Wedge says, okay. I accept that reasoning. And And it's just another step in Face's own character arc, developing into the captain of Wraith Squadron by the end of this book.
I mean, he also, there's some reference to his nemesis here too.
Yeah, Tetran Cowell. So I have to ask you, did you suspect at all that it was not Baron Sunterfell or
Yes.
the 181st? Okay.
Yes, I had no idea who he would be, but it was really weird that he wouldn't even hint at Wedge's sister.
Well, because nobody knows it.
I know. That's why it was...
Yeah.
Just,
so that was the clue for you.
Yeah, it just doesn't
Okay.
fit. Like, why would he not even mention his wife? Like, not even a slight...
When he's specifically flying against Wedge.
Yeah, and trying to distract Wedge.
Yeah.
But he has no idea why it works. Other than he thinks that, oh, well, this guy betrayed you, so that's why you're after him.
Yeah.
Which is a mystery that we don't get solved again. Just drag that carrot.
Yeah. You'll have to go much further into the expanded universe to get answers there.
Great.
Although I do think when you eventually get there, you'll be satisfied with those answers. But on the subject of Wedge and Baron Fell, for me, when I first read these books, I was also kind of tipped off to it. But it wasn't because of that reasoning. It was that every time there was an opportunity for one of our characters to meet Baron Fell in person, you know, like when Face and Dia and Kel go to Iron Fist and they ask about, you know, oh, Baron Sunterfell, is he here? And Zinj kind of has this like blustery, he's like, oh, no, he has duties elsewhere. And then in this one, when Lara is flying simulators against him, and she, you know, like asks him if she wants to, or if he wants to like go get dinner or whatever, and he's like, no, I have more simulators to fly, like I can't do that. And so there's always an excuse for why the characters never see him until the end here, when Wedge shoots him down.
Yeah, I guess I should have seen that hint too.
Yeah, but I did like that twist, though. I thought it was fun, and I thought it was a good way to tie back to Face, you know, at his background, you know, and how Ton Fannin was going to leave all that money for Tetran Cowell instead of Face if Face didn't agree to get the scar removed and sort of symbolically forgive himself.
Yes.
You know, and the account doesn't need balancing. You can't reduce sapient lives to numbers like that, which is a great line from Tom Fannin. But yeah, it's really deftly done. The way we have pretty distinct character arcs across several characters, but Alston finds ways to interweave ancillary elements of all of those together so that it makes sense to be telling this cohesive story in one squadron.
Yeah. Isn't there also a moment where I just lost it. Where Face he has like an actor moment. And Wedge tells him, I figured you could recognize one of your own.
Oh, that vaguely rings a bell. I don't remember the context of it, but that does ring a bell.
Boom. Foreshadowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was... no, that's right. It was... He has Face as one of like the consultants when they're listening to Lara's recording and analyzing it and trying to figure out, like,
yes,
can we trust
that's
this?
When the line is.
And he has Face in there because he's an actor and he can, you know, sort of judge the recording based on vocal stresses and what he knows about Lara as an intelligence agent and an actress. And yeah.
Yep, that's right. That's where it is. Okay. Also, he notices a cue of Lara's when they have a dance. and she does this
Coruscant charm signing.
Yeah, charm signing, where she does like some sort of flick with her hand.
She twirls her finger.
Twirls it, yeah. And it's a sign that you can give me a kiss now. Mm-hmm. And he's dancing with Dia, and he's like, no, she's into it. She just did the sign. Mm-hmm. And Dia's like, what? What sign?
She's like, oh, I thought she was just describing something. He said, oh, I'm sure she was. She seamlessly wove it into the conversation.
The way you're supposed to.
Yeah, and then he starts saying what it is, and then he stops, and he's like, wait, well, how would she know Coruscant charm signing? And then he kind of thinks, he's like, well, maybe it's something Admiral Tridget might have,
that's a good excuse.
Brainwashed her into. And he also notes when Donos tries to hit on Lara earlier in the book, and Lara shoots him down, and she stalks away, and Face notices that she has the walk of a native throne worlder.
When she forgets, she does it.
Yeah, and so he's like, it would make sense that maybe Admiral Tridget would be offended by the rangy stride of a farm girl, so he taught her how to walk like a Coruscant native. But there were so many of these adding up that eventually Face started putting the puzzle pieces together.
Okay, I found the scene, by the way, where they're flirting.
Mm-hmm. Before the bin ring raid?
Yes. He goes, there's something I wanted you to think about.
Yeah, me.
What's that? Me. She looks at him, raises an eyebrow, and goes, Rebel pilots have the biggest egos in all the known universe. He goes, well, it's not like that. I'm asking out of a sense of fairness since I'm spending all this time thinking about you. And she goes, I'm not amused.
Yeah.
Fair enough. He says, good. I'm not trying to amuse you. Look, I just spent a long time working up the nerve to bring this up with you at all. It was harder than most anything I've done. So don't be amused. Take it seriously. I like that.
So there's also a parallel in this scene that I'm surprised you didn't bring up that ties back to Kel and Tyria in Wraith Squadron when Kel works up the nerve to tell Tyria about his interest, and she shoots him down, and she's like, you're not interested in me. You're interested in your mental image of me.
Well, I think we talked about that in that book, didn't we?
We did,
okay.
But you didn't bring it up with this scene where there's a clear parallel where Min is saying, I'm interested in you. I want to get to know the real you. And she's like, no, you don't. Well,
she says, I'm not right for you. Is her next line.
Yeah. Well, so he says...
And then he says, oh, that's a very good sign. And she goes, what is? He said, you didn't say, go away. I don't like you.
So, it's... Yeah, I know, Lauren. There's a later scene when they are... when he's talking to her in the lounge, and he says, I want to get to know you. I want to get to know the real you. And she has this hard-edged laugh, and she goes, oh, no, you don't. And he's like, why? Tell me why. And she says, I could say 9 words to you right now, and the very best that would happen is that you would never want to talk to me again.
Yes.
And Min recognizes the truth in her words and says, well, don't say those words then. And then he talks to her, and that's where I think the relationship starts getting healthier, because he brings up the fact, he said, I don't know you. Does anybody know you? And she kind of has to think about it, and she says no. And he says, do you know you? And she says, least of all me.
Yeah.
And so it's this sort of mutual understanding where they're both broken people. And while there may be an unhealthy attraction in that sense, where it's like broken attracted to broken because they're both broken,
not to fix it,
but it sets both of them ultimately down a path where they can fix themselves, where it's not Min Donos trying to fix Lara and turn her into his ideal of what Lara Notzel should be. Yeah. It was Min Donos recognizing she's in pain and wanting her to heal in a genuine way.
Yes. Yes, and then he realizes he needs to.
And that's the scene when she agrees, okay, let's get to know each other. Okay, let's try this.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, yeah. Are there any other characters you want to talk about?
Okay, so you didn't mention the assassins at all.
The Zinj brainwashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, Piggy stops one of the assassins early in the book and gets shot in the stomach. And so he spends some time in the back to tank. And then when he's finally ready to come back and join everybody, they have a party for him. And Shala and Kel work up an instruction manual for him. And it is called How to Dodge.
Yeah. And I love how that scene ends, where Piggy is just sort of taking all of this lighthearted, good-natured abuse and just smiles faintly and thinks to himself, it's good to be back.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he says it was good to be home.
Yeah, home, yeah. And I think that's a really touching word choice there, because Piggy is such an outcast. He is unique, and he's spent his whole career and his whole life being ostracized, and here he has somewhere that he can call home.
That, and I told you earlier, I love the scene at the end in the final battle where he's just doing math in his head and he's like, yep, fighter pilot, coming up this way. Shallow, that's you. Like, and he has this comment in his head to himself, and he's like, I love math.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that's sweet. You know, especially since he had a moment, you know, earlier where he's like, I am forever alone.
Yeah.
I can't be with another member of my species. And I won't have a mate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a powerful moment too.
Oh. And then we find out there is one like him. Two like him.
Yes, the other Gamorreans.
Yep.
Although
and one's a female.
as he points out though, were they to procreate, their offspring would not be the same. Their offspring would be a normal Gamorrean.
And it would be heartbreaking to him.
Yeah. And
then somebody has a really good thought for him where they're like, no, like
your legacy can still endure just because you don't have the opportunity to have biological offspring just like yourself doesn't mean that you can't be an example and a leader and a teacher and a role model for other people and for young people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, also Elisar. Makes me laugh.
Oh.
We have a Deveronian, finally, in this book.
Uh-huh.
And
he's so obnoxious.
He's really superstitious, and it makes me laugh. Isn't there one point where he's, like, before a battle, he's going around the X-Wings?
He's stuffing, like, little bread figurines into nooks and crannies on it.
It's because Runt sneezed.
Well, and so
in the mission briefing, right as they were asking if there was anything wrong with the plan, and he was like, "Oh, that means there's something wrong."
Yeah, and did you note that is the mission that Lara is outed?
Yeah.
That there was a flaw in the mission plan.
Yeah, I really like that.
So,
but I find it hilarious that he's trying to counteract it with whatever voodoo he's doing. He's got some good lines.
So of the sort of tertiary wraiths that we get across these three books, he's probably my favorite. Like when I consider characters like Jesmyn or Castan Dawn, or Fallon or Grinder, characters who didn't get a whole lot of page time, and Elisar is another one of those where they don't have like a fully developed character arc. They don't get a bunch of points of view or anything. But Elisar is the most entertaining of those.
I love Fallon, and I really loved Grinder.
I did not love Grinder. I thought Grinder was obnoxious. Fallon was okay. I thought she was an interesting character, and I feel like if she had been given more time, if she hadn't died and had stuck around, we could have seen a really interesting character arc for her. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not super upset that she died when she did.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
So, so any other characters you want to touch on.
Oh, we meet Admiral Rogris for the first time. Or I did.
Yes. Yeah.
And I liked him.
Yeah, I like him too.
He's honorable. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
One of the things I like about that side of, the Imperial collaboration storyline in this is that it gives a little more of a human face to the Empire. I've always been a little annoyed at how monolithic the Empire is portrayed in the major Star Wars media, where if you serve the Empire, you are evil.
You're brainwashed or you're evil, right?
Yeah, and so there was a little bit of pushback, especially in the late 90s and into the 2000s in the expanded universe, where we started getting a little more humanization of Imperials and seeing how and why some people chose to serve in the Empire, and then how they grappled with the knowledge of the really evil things. And there's a book that hopefully at some point we'll cover on the podcast called Allegiance by Timothy Zahn that I think is one of the best at this. One of the main characters is a stormtrooper. And
what about Han? Do we get any exploration into his?
There's the Han Solo trilogy that goes into it a bit.
Where does that start?
Before the original Star Wars movie.
So is he with the Corellian forces, or is he a stormtrooper?
It's with him on Corellia. His starts with his childhood.
What?
But yeah, and so with Rogris here, though, we see how the universe, the Star Wars universe, is more complicated than just a black and white New Republic good, Imperials bad. Like that, as in all things in life, it's more complicated. And we see, these factions popping up, and we see over the course of the X-Wing books, we see members of the New Republic who are not as wholesome as our main characters.
Yeah, so I felt the same way about Zinj in this book. I feel like he's better developed. And I get to see all the machinations behind his empire, and I can have a little respect for him. He isn't just, stupid supervillain who just is evil because he's evil, and he just is, he's really easy to defeat because the author needs him to be defeated. No, he has all these intricate plans, and he puts on this persona because it helps with... He
presents himself as like a comic book caricature of a villain, but when we see that mask slip away, he is a much more real human being. And yes, he is morally corrupt and selfish and egotistic and all of this, but he is not the one-dimensional cartoon character that he's presented as.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I thought he was a good character.
And similarly with Melvar, they adopt personas for public consumption, so to speak.
Melvar, I feel like we don't get enough of, like, not the way we get Zinj.
Well, Melvar's not the main villain. He's a henchman.
Yeah.
So.
But I would like him to be better developed, if we had a ton more time and it weren't like a 300-page book.
Yeah, because these are short books.
Yeah.
But speaking of them being short books, we want to keep this episode a little short too. So unless there are any like pressing character things you want to talk about, I think we should move into our 3 favorite scenes in this book.
Oh, man, I never think of these in time. Okay, go. You go.
Okay, so... my 3 favorite scenes in Solo Command. I love the raid on Bin Ring Biomedical, but specifically the scene when they get dumped into the incinerator and they break out. And there's one line that every time I read it just hits so hard when they're all burned and injured and Face is basically seeing red, and he says, Wraiths, no mercy, no quarter. Like it is one of the most ruthless mentalities we ever see adopted by one of the good guys. And it's another one of these situations that explores the psychotic landscape of war and how this horrible thing has just happened to them. And of course, they're going to react in such an extreme way. So that moment was always just a gut punch to me. Just seeing Face go over that line and then looking around and seeing the faces of his squadron mates and knowing that they would not have accepted any other order.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so every time I think of that scene, I see the part where they're all out except for Runt. And they're all thinking, oh no.
Yeah, where's Runt?
We lost him. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we lost him. And also, I love Runt. You know I love Runt.
Yeah,
I think he's my favorite. And then he just comes like bursting out of there on fire.
Uh-huh.
And just like
howling in pain, yeah.
Well, he just seems so enraged and out of control a little bit.
Well, and
then he just takes down what is his name? Netburs.
Yeah. Well, so that description of Runt is when you remember that he's essentially a horseman.
Yes.
The description of his eyes rolling in his head, you can see the whites. It's exactly like a maddened horse.
Yes.
I
love that.
Yeah, so my second favorite scene after that is a little more lighthearted, and it's gotta be when Jansen is set up to feed
We
Ketch.
didn't talk about it.
Oh, it's so funny. Where Wedge convinces Jansen through this elaborate hoax that he needs to strip naked and smear Ewok food on himself, and then gets locked in a cafeteria with all the rest of the Wraiths, and holding the Ketch stuffed doll, and then Wedge has a callback to when Jansen was making fun of Wedge in Iron Fist about, he's like, on some worlds it's a felony to perform a puppet show while flying a starfighter, and then in this one Wedge says, it's on some worlds it's a felony to wear an Ewok as a swimsuit, and yeah, it's just so funny.
And then there's a callback to it later where Shala's like, yeah, we'd miss your nice butt,
Yeah. Nice rear, Lieutenant. Thank you, Lieutenant. But yeah, and then the best scene in the book is what we talked about earlier. It's when Lara must flee from the Wraiths, and just that entire sequence. The conversation with Face and with Donos, and Donos firing on her. Just brilliant writing.
Okay, so I thought of a third favorite. And that's going to be the scene where the entire ship, except for those on duty, has a mutiny.
The mutiny, yeah.
started by Wedge. Mm-hmm. Because, they were so down-spirited.
Yeah.
And he knew from the past two books.
Yep.
Gotta
morale.
Have morale. Gotta fix that. And then they start playing poker, and it's Wedge and Han Solo and... the other captain? Captain
Onoma.
Yeah. I thought that was hilarious. Face comes up to him with a report at one point, and he's like, I am not Wedge.
I just look like Wedge. Yeah.
And then they have, a full 48 hours that nobody remembers.
Yeah.
Nobody has any idea what happened.
Strange amnesia creeping through the crew, but it only strikes people when they go off duty.
Crazy that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So what were your other two favorites?
Oh, shoot. No, that's hard. I mean, I love the scene with Piggy.
Yeah.
How to dodge.
Yeah.
Very, very nice.
And I would assume the Lara scene is your first.
Well, I'm thinking of which Lara scene. Maybe I'll bring up another one. There's one where she has left the bridge of the Iron Fist and nobody's noticed, but she's in the middle of carrying out her plan to take it down. Mm-hmm. And she sends out her transmission, and of course they get it on the bridge, and it's just her face. And her saying, like, if all goes according to plan, their hyperdrive is non-functional. And this is, like, the rest of my plan. And they realize, and Zinj is just completely outraged.
I love how that scene starts when, it's like, sir, transmission. He's like, who's it, who's it to? He's like, I don't know. It's from us. And Zinj just looks at Melbar and he goes, oh, we are in trouble. Where he immediately grasps the significance of it.
Yeah.
And then I think when he finishes watching the recording from Lara and he turns back to Melvar and he says, I intend for her death to be so horrible it gives me nightmares.
Ugh.
Yeah. But yeah, so just before we go into the final draft, I want to ask you, now that you've read the 3 Wraith Squadron books, the main sequence of the Wraith books, what do you think overall of the squadron and the story here?
I really like details on the squadron because I grew up with the movies and we don't get any of that. Mm-hmm. I will say, I told you earlier, Han Solo is not the same character. He's not the same character that I grew up with in the books. Mm-hmm. This is a different... I understand he's probably changed in the intervening time between the end of the last movie and where he's, a general in these books.
Yeah.
But the humor isn't quite the same.
Yeah, and they specifically call that out in the text here where Wedge has these moments with Han and he thinks about how much the pressure of leadership has weighed down on Han and how much older it makes him seem and he's so serious. But we do have those brief moments where the Han from the movies kind of breaks through.
Yeah, but it's not quite the same.
Okay.
Which is kind of disappointing, but I don't know how you capture that character on screen exactly. Mm-hmm.
It's certainly not easy to do.
Yeah. I really love getting to know more about the universe. Obviously, there's so many species and things that I have to ask you what it is, because I have no idea. Unless it was in the movie, like on scene, then you can reference me to that, but otherwise I'm just like,
yeah.
Verboten? Like, I remember them being referenced, but I have no idea what their culture's like, mm-hmm. what they look like, and it's been kind of fun to get to know that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a Talz mentioned mm-hmm. in this. Well, in multiple books, right? Because one of them's tortured and he just...
Yep.
And they're supposed to be the most gentle creatures. Mm-hmm. Just, stuff like that. I've really enjoyed getting to know more. Or the different ships. I had no idea. They don't explain that in the movies. This is a TIE Defender. This is a TIE Interceptor. This is an X-Wing. This is a Y-Wing. I had no idea. I was just like, oh yeah, that's the ship that so-and-so flies in.
Okay.
All right. So I'm enjoying it.
Cool. Well, I think that is about the time to take us into the final draft. And I'll start this one off. I am drinking a beer that you bought for me because I didn't have time. It is thematically appropriate. So this is an unfiltered juicy IPA from Verboten Brewing Company in Loveland, Colorado, the town just south of us. And it is... for a juicy, hazy IPA, it's about what you would expect. It's A lot of mango, a lot of pineapple, tropical fruit flavors. I think it's probably Citra hops. So it's Citra, Mosaic, and Eldorado hops. So all three of those usually pretty juicy tropical flavors come out. It's a pretty solid beer. I'm not always the biggest IPA fan or hazy IPA fan, but I'm enjoying this. So this is called Stealth Haze, which is very appropriate for the Wraiths.
And there's a spaceship on it, a hop spaceship.
Yes, there's a hop with a rocket on the bottom.
But yeah.
So what are you drinking?
Wait. I want to talk about Verboten.
Okay.
So they were one of the first German breweries that I was introduced to through my beer club. And I think they were also the first ones to tell me what Reinheitsgebot was.
Interesting.
So it's the German purity law. It was from 1516, where the Germans decided that you can make beer with only these 4 ingredients. Mm-hmm. And you can't vary, and you can't add extra special stuff. You can't, make a chocolate stout or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. What was it? So, water, hops, barley, and yeast or something like that? Yeah.
Yep.
But, of course, within the confines of those 4 ingredients, there's almost endless,
as we've
possibilities. And we have tons of different styles of traditional German beers using only those ingredients.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that you call Verboten a German brewery, though, because I've never understood them as a German brewery.
Well,
I've had so many American-style beers.
I think of that because their name means forbidden. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just can't get it out of my head.
Okay.
But
so,
yeah.
What are you drinking?
So, Drew, it's pretty great.
All right.
See if you can... So it's in Latin. Do you know...
Lonctus viribus.
Yep.
So this
is
it's
Viribus.
Barrel-aged sour ale, aged in tequila barrels and Cabernet Sauvignon barrels.
Okay, what does it mean? Do you know from your roots?
Oh, is that moon? The loon in that?
No, wrong loon.
Okay. I don't. Viribus, I would recognize maybe the root for virile, powerful, potent, but I don't know.
Joined forces.
Interesting. Yep. So force, that's okay.
So I picked it, obviously because Imperial forces and the rebels.
The collaboration.
Collaborate to take Siege down.
Okay.
And I thought it was kind of fun.
Talk to me about the beer, and I want to taste the beer.
Okay. So it is... Oh, it's only 5.4%. That's interesting from Avery.
Ooh.
So, Avery is a local brewery. Are they? Yeah, they're
Boulder.
technically in Boulder.
Yeah.
They're right on the edge.
We call them local. They're originally from Boulder, Colorado. They're still in Boulder, Colorado, although they are technically no longer a microbrewery or a craft brewery because they're owned by Maho San Miguel, this huge liquor conglomerate from Portugal, I think.
Well, unfortunate.
Yeah.
I wish they'd remained
independent,
but
they still make good beer.
Of course they do, and they have a series called the Demon Series, which is really high ABVs.
Yeah, and they haven't done the Demon Series in a few years now, but
what?
Avery is known for they're known for their high ABV, strong ales, stouts, barley wines, quads. They have some very powerful, very, very strong beers. A lot of them are over 15, 16, even 17%.
Yep.
In fact, I believe I brought one on from the Demon Series for the first half of Blade of Tai Shao.
Oh,
when
which
we
one?
covered that, I brought on the Beast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was I think that batch, I think it was the 2017 Beast was 16.8% or something like that. It was pretty ridiculous. But yeah, that beer's really tasty though. There's a lot of tequila character comes out from that barrel. It is very bright. A little bit of lime I get out of that.
I like it.
Very drinkable.
It's pretty darn tasty.
So yeah, I think that brings us to the end of this episode though. This has been episode 54 of the Inking Out Loud podcast. Next up, we will be covering all of Crossroads of Twilight, the 10th book of the Wheel of Time. And we have actually already recorded that episode, and let me tell you, it is one of the best we've done, so you'll want to check that out. We have a couple of special guests on that one, including 2 brand new guests for the podcast. And if you want early access to that episode, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/inkingoutloud. You can, in addition to getting early access to our episodes, you can get access to monthly short fiction written by Rob or me. You can get access to our monthly short episodes covering general fantasy topics or short stories. We got a whole bunch of fun benefits, so check us out there. As always, I am your host, Drew McCaffrey, and with me is my special guest, Lauren McCaffrey.
Thanks, guys.
And thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.